Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, April 28th, 2025. Alastair Crooke will be here with us in just a moment on these proposals by General Kellogg. Are they actually undermining President Trump? But first, this. While the markets are giving us whiplash, have you seen the price of gold? It's soaring. In the past 12 months, gold has risen to more than $3,000 an ounce. I'm so glad I bought my gold, it's not too late for you to buy yours. The same experts that predicted gold at $3,200 an ounce now predict gold at $4,500 or more in the next year. What's driving the price higher? Paper currencies. All around the world, they are falling in value. Big money is in panic as falling currencies shrink the value of their paper wealth. That's why big banks and billionaires are buying gold in record amounts. As long as paper money keeps falling, they'll keep buying, and gold will keep rising. So do what I did. Call my friends at Lear Capital. You'll have a great conversation, and they'll send you very helpful information. Learn how you can store gold in your IRA tax and penalty free or have it sent directly to your doorstep. There's zero pressure to buy and you have a 100% risk-free purchase guarantee. It's time to see if gold is right for you. Call 800-511-4620, 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeNap.com and tell them your friend the judge sent you. Alastair Crooke, welcome here, my dear friend. Always a pleasure. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. Before we get to your interesting piece on General Kellogg's proposals for resolving the special military operation in Ukraine and President Trump's likely response, a few questions about Israel. Well, why were there no significant Israeli officials at the Pope's funeral? What kind of a message are they trying to send?
One of disapproval. They've disapproved of the Pope. They think he took too much of a sort of Palestinian view. I know that you and I would have said that he didn't take any particular position on the Palestinian issue, but nonetheless, the Israelis won't deal with anyone that doesn't forcefully take the Israeli position on these things. And the Vatican was ambivalent, shall we say. And so
my goodness,
they're not happy.
It drew everybody from Vladimir Zelensky to Donald Trump to Joe Biden. They even shook hands and sat near each other. But the Israelis could not show any respect for the Pope. Didn't they actually remove even a perfunctory expression of condolence from the Israeli-Vatican embassy website?
Yeah, but I mean, this is typical Israel. They're actually also examining whether it's possible to accuse UNRWA and the United Nations agencies of prosecute them through the courts because of their actions in support of the Palestinians. I mean, the Israeli government now is moved into a very aggressive stance on this. And that's reflected somewhat too, unfortunately, both in Europe and in America, when any statements in favor of Palestinians can lead, depending how they're phrased, but it can lead to punishment and even to jail. So, I mean, the crackdown is intense. And so this was, I think, intended to signal to the Vatican, Israel will not allow any interference in the Palestinian issue. They are to remain silent on the issue. And I think that was quite clearly the message sent.
In the past week, the opposition leader in the Knesset, Yair Lapid, has said, don't be surprised, and he said this in a regretful way, if you soon see Jews killing Jews. Haaretz, a daily publication in Israel, the English version of which you and I consult every day, said that Netanyahu wants to set up a dictatorship. I gather the divisions in Israeli society, the domestic political divisions, are pretty severe today.
Very severe, very severe. There is the ongoing fight over the head of Shin Bet, the security service in Israel, who's made accusations, harsh accusations against the prime minister, of lying, of trying to persuade the head of Shin Bet to make his loyalty to the prime minister rather than to law or constitution. Not that there is a constitution, but to basic laws there. A very vicious fight is going on. The Haredim are at the moment besieging, those are the Orthodox Jews, are besieging the IDF recruitment centers because they object to being inculcated into the military forces. They refuse to serve, and then you have many of the reservists who are shocked and angered and close to mutiny because Israel has just announced they're going to have to do another period of reserve, the fourth, I think, period of reserve duty in Gaza or in Lebanon or wherever it's required. So huge, and the constitutional crisis went on. 60, I think I said, but 60% of the Israelis believe that civil war is coming. And as you put it, Lapid said, Jews killing Jews. I mean, it's quite close. And this is why, I've said to you for some time, I mean, without, the United States and Trump's support, Israel will come apart. I mean, it's so divided and so in factions. There's no consensus about the direction ahead, no consensus about the wars that they've been fighting, a sense of defeat. It is a very serious situation that they're in. It could come apart at any time. They're overextended everywhere, from Syria to Lebanon to Gaza to the West Bank, everywhere. So I think it's serious.
And Netanyahu's staff members who are under investigation for being bribed by Qatar in return for the release of top secret information. So there's several crimes there. There's espionage and bribery, just allegations at this point, apparently are turning on each other in their interrogations.
To save themselves, yes, they are turning on each other, and the allegations are taken. Look, we don't know the details, we're not privy to the details, but Israelis generally are taking them very seriously. And the suggestion that is running in Israel, rightly or wrongly, true or not true, is that actually Qatar was paying off, if you like, its officials, Israeli officials, in order to get a better deal for Hamas in the negotiations, the hostage negotiation. If that's true, wasn't a very successful ploy, but it's very difficult to say, we still don't know, and no one has enunciated exactly what were the Qataris paying for. That they were paying widely for things, it seems to be more or less uncontested now, in Israel at least. But what were they paying for? What did they want out of this? This is still a question, open question.
Moving to American woes.
Yes.
Is there, how serious is the effort to dislodge the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and who or what do you think might be behind it?
The effort to dislodge him, there are, I think, two aspects to it. One aspect is the man himself, Pete Hegseth. Is he a suitable candidate for the defense secretary? Let's leave that aside, because that's about personalities and character and things like that. It's an important question, but actually the question inside is the depth of division within the Defense Department, particularly between those, that he was, this attack on him, and those who were ousted recently. There were several of them ousted, including Dan Colwell. These were the people who had persuaded Hegseth, if you like, to side with those in Trump's team in favor of an Iranian negotiation to try and find a diplomatic accommodation with Iran. And that's what it was about. It was about a deeper struggle within the Defense Party from those who believe, if you like, these are the people that believe, in the end of history and American-led rules order, and believe that they are trying to save America from Trump. These are, in other words, there's a large contingent in the bureaucracy and in the uniform clothes that are never Trumpers. Sometimes they say it out loud, sometimes they keep it to themselves, but they are pursuing a policy against Mr. Trump in many respects. And it's not only that, it's a cultural thing where the culture has been of, American primacy has been so inculcated into people that it's very difficult to move part of it. And also the Defense Department is a huge organization. It's the biggest anthill in the world, effectively. And, all of these people's career paths and their interests and everything, you change and you put a civilian in charge of a key part of the defense ministry, and lots of career paths suddenly are all over the place and are disrupted, and people get angry and resent it. So this is a major problem. This is what is the issue that is really at the heart of why there's a problem in Russia, on Ukraine now. Trump, Witkoff has just been in Moscow, and I think Moscow says very politely and clearly to Witkoff, to take this further, we've taken this a little way. We're willing to negotiate. We're willing to meet with Ukrainians. But we've got to see that Mr. Trump can consolidate his position and his leadership. We have to say that. And I think they've said that to him fairly bluntly. Until we get that, all we can do is to move towards a rapprochement that is positional. Not as a rapprochement in terms of a formal deal. Yes, we can go on talking. We should go on talking. We can try and improve the proposal that you brought, which has some good elements in it. It's much better than the one that was originally proposed by Kellogg, which was basically seeking not only an armistice, but the subjection. I mean, it was a complete one for people. It was like the Versailles Treaty. It was a punishment proposal. So it has improved. But this is the problem. And this was the problem again. How did all this thing come out in the Defense Department? It came out basically because of Iran policy, because they did not want the negotiations. And at the same time, you had the commander of CENTCOM, General Kurilla, who's been in Israel, who was setting up an attack on Iran with the Israelis, which the Israelis want and like. And Kurilla has about a few months, as I understand it. That's what I believe. He's got a few months left in office as a commander of CENTCOM, which has always had a certain degree of latitude in the terms of its control. And he wants his war, and he wants his war in Iran, and Israel wants him to have his war. So this is the problem, is really that what you talk about in the Pentagon is contaminating both the prospects at the moment for taking forward to an early agreement some new position on Ukraine with Russia, or to getting towards, if you like, full normalization with Russia. And it's also putting a huge cloud. Netanyahu yesterday told his ministers that no, on Iran there must be a complete dismantling of their enrichment capabilities of their infrastructure. The infrastructure must be completely removed on the lines that happened in Libya, where it was, which was different. But the Libya model, and he said also, then they have to address the ballistic missile, the missile question. That has to be addressed too. And so this is, there are a lot of people in the Pentagon who agree with him and who think that it's not possible to have a deal before.
I have to say how surprised I was, since I know Pete Hegseth fairly well from having worked with him for 10 years. I was pleasantly surprised, but truly surprised at reading from the Signal transcripts. I know he shouldn't have been on that app, but whatever, that he was arguing for restraint. And,
he was.
And so your argument that the people that hate Trump and the neocons that want war are likely behind the efforts to humiliate him out of office is a very rational argument. This week,
they're behind the leaks.
Yes,
they are clearly behind the leaks, and the leaks are intended not only to take him out of the leadership. And I think it's an unfortunate trend that's gone on. I'm not American and I'm far away, but since Obama's time, he's had defense secretaries that are military generals. And so they've got rather used to this. And you know what the military like? Who's this civilian telling us how to run a military? I mean, we're military people. We know how to, why would this happen? And I mean, Trump did that in his first term with Mattis, for example. But Obama certainly loaded himself up with ex-generals in this way. And so, there is a whole culture there, which is, about hegemony and about America, the end of, the end of history. It's all over, and now we run the world, and this is how we've been running it for all these years. And now Trump has come in and he wants to do different things, and we disagree. And this is going to, in my view, I mean, this is just my personal view, but I see it reflected in Russia too. I mean, in the sense the Russians, because they look, they look at both all of these things that are happening, and they say, when are the midterms? Next year? We have to take that into account, because who knows what could happen in this period in the economy or in many of these issues. I mean, maybe, we'll see the sort of Biden forces steaming in again in November next year, after November next year. So, I mean, they not going to put themselves into a strategically dangerous position simply to help Trump in this way. And this is why, one of the strange things, I was just going to say it as an anecdote, actually, we've now got into a position where history is repeating itself, because Trump really is negotiating president to president. He's not relying on any parts of his two wings to his team. I mean, he is doing this directly through Witkoff, his personal friend, who's going and talking to Putin. When did we last see that? JFK with Khrushchev. That was the last time a president has negotiated and kept his, if you like, his officials out of the question, and he negotiated directly with Khrushchev until ultimately JFK was executed. But that's really where we are now. Trump is trying to do these things, and he's indicated almost that he'd like to do that with Iran. He said, well, maybe I would like to have a meeting with the supreme leader. I mean, this is the extent of the internal blockage, I think. And so, Putin is watching this and is saying, some of the things, Witkoff, that you brought with you, the changes you brought with you, the, if you like, de jure recognition of Crimea, the de facto recognition of Russian control, we can work with these. There are some things that we can, take along. They're much better than the Kellogg proposals.
Yeah, I still think that Trump may surprise everyone and show up in Moscow on May 9th. Last week, he publicly chided President Putin because civilians were killed in an attack on a nearby military facility in Kyiv, and he wrote on his own website, "Vladimir, stop." And then he basically said it's dreadful that he's killing civilians. At the same time he said this, Hegseth's people are bombing civilians in Yemen.
Yeah,
now, he's been in office by the end of this week 100 days. Is it now fair to say Ukraine is his war, Gaza is his war?
I think, what I've been saying about Putin, let's leave aside that, because, I hear that actually the target in Kiev that he's complaining about was an underground headquarters full of, if you like, defense officials. Some of them may have been foreign, that were killed. No doubt civilians were killed in the process, but this is war, and this is what their target was, probably. The Russians just shrug at this. I mean, it came at the end of his Truth Social tweet that he made about, come on, Vladimir, you must stop now. This is terrible. They're used to that. They know he has to do this because of his domestic constituency. They don't deal with that. But what they would like to see is him take control and a clear evidence that he has, if you like, agency in this negotiation. That if he says, okay, that's the end of it, there will be a ceasefire. I am going to take action with the Europeans who are undermining him, and with Zelensky and Kiev, who are undermining Trump's efforts. When they see real sort of signs of, consolidation of leadership, I think things can move along quite quickly. But until then, as I say, I think we'll have just a rapprochement. There will be words saying it was a useful visit by Witkoff, and there's going to be another one in a little time, and they'll move forward, increment by increment, but there won't be the actual deal, the sort of the final cutting of the ribbon, if you like, until they see a clear indication. We still don't know. Supposing after a ceasefire, after an agreement, does the United States tend to rearm Ukraine? Does it intend to go on training it? Does it intend to go on giving intelligence? I don't think any of these issues have been resolved, and I don't see that Putin, and I'm standing back from this and saying, even if I were Putin, and the experience that Russia has had during this period, I would need to have these things nailed down very clearly, because everything can change in America in the next year and a half. And then where would I be? I could be in a much worse situation, militarily and politically, than now. Even now, it's quite possible, and this is in the Russian calculation. I mean, even now, it is quite possible that we'll see Trump trim his sails with the Europeans, and that he will sort of leave all these things rather ambiguous, and that it will worsen the position, worsen the, if you like, the situation from the perspective of Moscow. So, that is in their calculation too, that he may start, drifting to accept. And we know what the Europeans want. The Europeans want this to fail because they are desperate condition, and they know that a big crisis is coming in Europe. They understand that perfectly well. A huge political earthquake is coming, economic. Their only hope to ride this out is to cry war and to try and print more money, and hope that, by, if you like, creating debt and applying it into defense industry, they can somehow get through this period. Plus, of course, the usual narrative control, double down on narrative control. This is their only way of getting through and surviving as the European Union. So they're determined.
Just to end our conversation, where we began it about the Israelis. If they're going to depose the Netanyahu government because he doesn't have a majority, they might want to do it this week because Ben Gvir, of all people, is here in New York, where the crowds have been shouting at him and calling him horrible things in Hebrew. This is in Wall Street. This is New York City.
Well, the war is in New York, not only in Israel.
Yes.
It's come to you. But I just say one last thing, because it was quite important what was said about Netanyahu who wants to get rid of it, because at the talks, and this is public, at the at Witkoff's negotiations with the Iranians, these were the technical negotiations. The Americans proposed that there can be no actual enrichment process in Iran. There can be a nuclear, if you like, energy structure, but this is only going to come by the West giving Iran, if you like, authorized enriched uranium, i.e. they're going to sit on a tap and they can turn it on and they can turn it off, and they're going to give Iran, and otherwise it will not be allowed to enrich anything. And
Wow.
I don't know what the Iranian reaction will be, but I can guess.
I mean, the Israelis and maybe the Americans just couldn't care less about the peaceful uses of that enriched uranium, including in high-end hospitals where it's the only way to address certain ailments. This is something that's universal in the United States today.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're looking for regime change there,
Yes.
not a solution.
Yes. Alastair, thank you very much. We're all across the board. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you for your time. As always, safe travels. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Coming up later today, live from Moscow, our dear friend Ray McGovern at 10 o'clock. At 11:30, Larry Johnson. At 1 o'clock this afternoon, Kevork Almassian. The Israelis are bombing suburbs in Beirut, around Beirut. And at 3 o'clock on all of this, including his debate with Alan Dershowitz, Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.